All right, so before we get started with our amazing guest today, Ashley Cooksey, we're just going to do a little housekeeping here. And again, it's great to have you guys back with us today. And if you have a question for us, contact us via our website, timeforforgiveness.org. And if you have a personal story that you'd like to share about your journey through forgiveness, we'd love to hear from you. And you can contact us also on our website. And please be sure to like us and subscribe on our YouTube page and follow us along on our social media pages on Instagram and Facebook. All right, so Ashley, welcome in today. We're really excited to hear your story and kind of get more in depth. I know we met here recently, but it was brief. But everything happens for a reason, and I know we bumped into you for a reason. And I'm really excited to have you on board here today to share your journey. And I know it's still fresh and raw. And so thank you for being so brave and vulnerable to come on and share your story. And I know this will help so many other women out there that have experienced what you recently had to endure and obviously are continuing to go through right now. So, Ashley, thank you for being on. And again, this is Kelly Pascuzzi and Robert Pascuzzi.
Mhm. Hi, Robert, and hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me on Time for Forgiveness today. We met briefly, as you mentioned, right in Santa Monica Beach, kind of just to the left of the pier. It's a beautiful place to be in the sunshine, and you guys had a little folding table out and a fishbowl and some pieces of paper, and you asked people what who they would want to forgive and why. And I kind of turned to Kelly, and I was struggling with what to write on it, and she was like, well, I said, doesn't everyone just write down themselves? Doesn't everyone just want to forgive themselves? And she said, some people do, but it usually turns into something else. And so I thought about it, and what I wrote down on the piece of paper was, I want to forgive it's not who, it's what. I want to forgive the bacteria that ended my infant son's life. And I had never really thought about it until that moment. So today I'm on here. I just really want to kind of tell people a little bit more about my journey with pregnancy and infant loss. I never thought I would be a PALE member. They call it the PALE Club, and it's not a club you want to be in, but by finding resources, I've really found it to be a community of some really beautiful people. But to kind of go back a little bit more to who I am, again, my name's Ashley Cooksey. I'm just kind of your regular, everyday Midwestern gal that ended up moving to LA to kind of seek out career in the fashion industry. Ended up meeting my husband a few years ago, and we immediately wanted to start a family. So we got married this past November at a beautiful beach wedding in Malibu. And we believe we pretty much conceived our baby boy on our wedding night. And so at that time we got married, I went on kind of an eat, pray, love trip to India, where I actually stayed at an ashram and did a yoga course for a few days. And that's where I found out I was pregnant. I was alone in India for the first time, and I waited about a week to tell my husband because we were going to be meeting in Bali for our honeymoon. And so he was kind of ready to start our honeymoon out with some cocktails and enjoy ourselves. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I have, kind of a gift to give you. And I gave him a little shirt that I had purchased in India. And that's how I revealed or told him that I was pregnant. Kind of fast forward to kind of finding out the gender. We did find out it was a boy, and pretty immediately settled on the name Declan because my husband's dad, or my father-in-law, he's a bit of a baby whisperer, and had a dream about another grandchild coming along in the family. A toddler came to him in a dream that was playing, and his name was Declan. And it's fitting because it's an Irish name meaning full of goodness, or man of goodness. And so we went ahead with that name. And I had like a really beautiful pregnancy filled with travel and good health. I'm really lucky to like live a pretty healthy lifestyle and have a healthy body. And, I just kind of went along the natural steps of pregnancy with what the recommended doctor's visits were. And pretty much where, our experience, our more difficult experience began was with just a routine OBGYN appointment, at which they noticed I was actually in starting signs of kind of preterm labor. I also had extra amniotic fluid in my belly, so I was only about 25 weeks pregnant, but my belly looked maybe 35 weeks pregnant. I was starting to feel a little uncomfortable, but I was just associating that with kind of nearing my third trimester, and things are just going to get kind of tight and uncomfortable. I don't know if there were any signs there of potential preterm labor. So I was admitted to the hospital at 25 weeks pregnant. There isn't a whole lot to do for the extra fluid in my belly. There's no removal or really medications to kind of alleviate that at this time. And so they put me on basically a magnesium drip for about 48 hours. It kind of slows down your muscles or the contractions, and it actually has some benefits of helping a potential preterm baby's brain function. And so I was kind of like, okay, well, maybe we can get through these 48 hours and we'll go home and just kind of take it easy. But as the days progressed, my pregnancy progressed as well. And I was in the hospital for on the 6th day, basically. It was just a very, very slowed down labor to where he was born on the 6th day. Everything was looking really good for him. I waited out. I was able to kind of stay pregnant for several days in the hospital, being monitored, but eventually, just inevitable that he was coming. And everything looked good for him. He was just under 2.5 pounds, which is, a good pound or two more, or half a pound to maybe even a pound more than what a 26-week baby should be. So great weight. He was safely and lovingly transferred to a higher grade NICU immediately within hours of birth. And I'm nearing the end of my story because unfortunately he did live a very short life. He made it to the NICU, and we were anticipating him with everything going kind of to plan and in the trajectory of their care plan for him that he would be home by his due date. So he came about 3 months early. We're expecting about a 3-month hospital stay. However, on his 5th day of life, I came into very concerned doctors and nurses, monitoring very low blood pressure and examining the possibility of a severe infection. And so just as a mommy and a new mom, I just knew in my heart that, it just, something wasn't right. And so his health just kind of declined that whole day. And, eventually the doctor did kind of have to just break it to my husband and I that his blood pressure had been down too low for several hours. They don't know what damage had been done to the rest of his, tiny organs and body. And, at some point that evening, basically, we'd probably just be giving him some comfort as he passed away. And that's what ended up happening. And the first time that my husband and I ever held our baby boy was when we were saying goodbye to him. And I'm surprised that I've been able to get through the story this far without kind of tearing up or getting emotional. But he did, I kind of held him in my arms while he was still hooked up to everything. And then they removed the wires and tubing, and my husband held him while he passed away. And it ended up being a bacteria called Pseudomonas. It's actually a hospital found bacteria. And so it was, could be looked at as a preventable death if that bacteria hadn't been present in the hospital, or maybe somehow in his tubing or care that was given to him. And this was just this past spring. So he was born April 23rd, 2023, and passed away on April 28th. And it's just been a really hard season to navigate. We've been doing virtual couples groups and things like that, but it's been really hard. He was supposed to be the fourth new grandbaby this year on my husband's side. His sisters both had babies this year. One had twins, and so he was kind of the fourth one that was, coming along this year. And yeah, it's just been very interesting to navigate with family, friends, work colleagues. And I'll kind of end my pretty long story or introduction there, with any questions.
Ashley, I want to acknowledge your courage that it takes just to be willing to come on and be vulnerable and share. And, I think we just want to resist like bringing all that up and experiencing those emotions again. But I am, as a mom, you're preparing for this beautiful baby, and you're not preparing for the unexpected of a loss of that magnitude. So I guess in the hospital, as your baby is passing, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I think there's there's moments of shock, or you're not kind of reacting in the way you think you should or you would. I think that day my husband was really hopeful and thinking this is just how it's going to be with our new NICU life, having this baby be in intensive care for months. So there's going to be good days and bad days, and this is just a bad day. They're monitoring him extra. And I actually wasn't planning to go to that hospital that day. I was feeling really overwhelmed about driving across traffic to LA to see him every day. And I was like, well, maybe it's Friday. Maybe I'll just take a day off. But it had only been a few days of visiting him and doing that back and forth. And I was like, no, I just woke up and showered and got out of the house. And my husband and I were having to visit him separately for work. So one of us would kind of go, and I would stay longer and kind of breast pump. And I just had more time on my hands than my husband did. And so I got there before him, and I just kind of saw what was going on and knew in my heart that things just weren't well that day. I went on social media and asked for immediate prayer for him, just anyone to pray for him. And I don't think I ever prayed so hard in my life in a single day. And then I was with my sister-in-law in the afternoon, and we went to a park for a few hours. They kind of were doing a blood transfusion on him, just kind of trying to do whatever they could to kind of revive him or get that infection out. And I got the call to go back to the hospital. I think things are just really plummeting on the monitors and things like that. And I never, been so scared or worried in my life. And, but back to what I was saying, where I think I was just in shock. I wasn't, screaming, crying, or quietly sobbing. I just kind of had, I don't want to call it a stoic face, but I kind of had just more of like a expressionless face a bit of that evening, I felt like. But the tears definitely rolled a lot. The snot was horrible, like kind of trying to wear a mask in the hospital, and just I was replacing them so much because of just all the snot from the tears. And
But you had said in the beginning of your story, you said, as a mother, I just instinctively knew something was wrong.
Yeah, I think my heart just sunk with seeing how things weren't normal. Like when you have a baby in the NICU, they kind of have them in this big incubator, and it's kind of closed because they keep them nice and hydrated and humidified, and they kind of put these blue Billy lights to kind of help with their skin and things like that. And when that's kind of all on there and the monitors seem fine, then that's kind of how you want things to be. My husband was wearing his sunglasses because the blue lights were hurting him to see our baby the first few days. But when everything's kind of opened up and they're, kind of really working with the baby, that's not good. So that was my more physical indicator. But just I don't know, there is just that, I think, mother instinct. I even told my husband recently, and I don't know how much truth there is to this, but in a way, I do think when I was admitted to the hospital and knew he was coming soon, I always knew, thankfully, I was going to be okay and survive this, but I just didn't know if he would. So I don't know if I was slowly saying goodbye, possibly, even though those several days beforehand when we were in the hospital, because there was just so much uncertainty.
Well, as you're sharing your story and you're talking about this, I just cannot let go of your husband. I mean, he's at work and has to keep continually, what's the word I want to say? Keep moving forward. And I'm just trying to imagine how he is able to hold all that together, knowing what is happening at the hospital.
Yeah, well, he came that particular day, the day my baby passed away. He did come, but was just a little bit behind me that day. So I kind of was messaging and calling him to really get there. But even throughout the day, when I just knew in my heart things weren't right, he kind of stayed close. I think he maybe went to go grab a beer and play darts with his brother, thinking I'll just stay close if anything goes wrong. When I'm just was just shaking my head all day, this isn't right, this isn't good, this isn't a normal day in the NICU. So he was there, but he does own a very seasonal business, and that operates in the summer months. And so in late April, this is when he really is supposed to be on his A game, and this really kind of, threw him off work-wise. Of course, that can easily be brushed aside in the, tragedy of the moment to kind of take care of that. But he really only took a week off work, really after his death, and had to really get back into it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm going is not the opportunity or freedom just to be you have to jump back in. And in regards to that, I'm curious, the support that you've received, did you feel that it was there? Did you feel that people, knew what to do, knew what to say, or was it uncomfortable, or what did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, that is just a whole new, again, club that we're now a part of that you're not just prepared for, and just being kind of jaded that now I kind of have a strong belief that a positive pregnancy test doesn't mean you're bringing a baby home in 9 months. You listen to positive birth story podcasts to prepare yourself for this really positive experience, but you don't prepare yourself for the worst. But we have been able to navigate relationships. So my husband's family is very close by, most only a half an hour to an hour away. And so they're just like here all the time. And it's a little hard when you maybe do need a little bit of space right after a loss, to communicate that. I also think we experienced, which was odd, and we've kind of been trying to find how to communicate it, but almost like a little bit of a generational difference with how we relate to maybe our parents and their grief, and maybe friends and siblings and our grief, and just how we can communicate and navigate those different groups. I think for our parents, kind of the unimaginable happened, and their grief is also compounded by us being their children suffering unimaginable grief that they maybe even haven't experienced. And then, maybe siblings and friends a little more our age, they can just talk about it when we want to talk about it, or don't talk about it. There's a little bit more understanding in a way. That was an interesting kind of relational difference that we personally noticed. And I think some other pregnancy and infant loss couples that we've met have kind of had a similar experience. But I think it just comes down to kind of guarding your heart with others. The medical field can be a really difficult place to navigate. Just how your circle is grieving or reacting to your story. Certain comments that are said can be helpful or unhelpful. So kind of noticing those helpfulness differences in your circle. Maybe even being okay with allowing some relationships to be set aside sometimes. Maybe a friend that's in friends that are different seasons of life, multiple living children. Inviting you to their birthday parties, like that can be hard to, maybe be something to go to right now. And then just as far as resources, I kind of found myself, trying to sign up for things that would help us, but not overdoing it. So I did find a resource for virtual pregnancy and infant loss couples. And my husband it was several weeks of meeting with other couples that have recently experienced a pregnancy or infant loss. And there were about 6 or 7 couples total from across the country, where we all were given an opportunity to tell our baby's story, and then, just kind of go through everything from, finding a therapist to how we work together or kind of, go through these waves of grief as a couple, finding different resources, memorializing your child, how that can be done. And I can touch on some more of those topics too, because I have some good information or kind of what we've done in some of those areas too.
I think that'd be great, Ashley. For those listening out there that could maybe benefit from those organizations, why don't we hit those here when we wrap up? I just wanted to ask you, and again, I really admire just your courage, because I know this isn't years you're looking back. This is months, and it's probably still very painful. Do you feel, that has your intuition told you anything yet? Are you getting anything that's coming into your mind that is helping you have better understanding of maybe why this happened, or how you might be able to use this in some way for good? Is anything, I know it's still very early, but have you had anything like that happen yet?
Yeah, I mean, somehow very immediately when I kind of immediately started reflecting on our experience, is just how much resiliency and strength that myself and my husband have for this season of our life. I think I realized that, life does have pain, suffering, hardship. Other things are just self-compassion. I think the childbearing or mother can really have a negative relationship with their body after a pregnancy or infant loss. And immediately I noticed luckily all of the things that my body did right. And it didn't go the other way. Like, I really kind of counted my blessings. So kind of having self-compassion with mind, body, and spirit. I've been practicing a lot of mindfulness and kind of loving kindness. So mindfulness is living intentionally kind of in the present moment. And you can practice through prayer, movement, meditation, maybe even yoga. For me, I have ties to kind of Christianity and even like Hinduism as it more relates to yoga and like Sanskrit mantras. My husband and I, we had a Christian wedding ceremony that his father officiated. And we have joined a local non-denominational Christian church. So just kind of knowing that suffering, again, is a part of this earthly existence, but it won't be forever, in the Lord's loving kindness and compassion, because it's really easy to say that it's not fair, or why me. I've spent probably half of the church services we've attended so far, just tears kind of streaming down my face, anytime grief, suffering, loss are mentioned. And I think ultimately just kind of like letting those tears flow is a way of releasing and just kind of, remembering our baby. One quote that is really good is, "Grief is love. It's all the love you want to give, but you cannot. All of the unspent love gathers in the corners of your eyes, the lump in your throat, and the hollow part of your chest. Grief is just love with no place to go." Jamie Anderson wrote that quote.
That's beautiful.
So I think, all the pain and suffering is just love. And, there's ways to, working with a therapist on loving compassion for yourself so that you can or mindfulness activities and distractions, hopefully you can get to more self-regulation where you're not maybe using distractions or house chores to kind of get away from your symptoms of grief. I think I do have a bit of anxiety, depression, PTSD are very common with pregnancy and infant loss. There's birth traumas as well. And, fertility struggles are very common as well and are part of this. I definitely, I'm struggling with, kind of mild, like moderate anxiety and depression right now. I think I've always lived with it at a low grade, but, things are a bit heightened now. And so I think getting a resource with a therapist, either specialized in pregnancy and infant loss. I don't have someone that's specialized, but I'm just working with someone to kind of manage my symptoms, and it's really helped. I think my husband has even told me that he's like, I can kind of, when you talk about Declan or what's happened to us or how you're doing right now, I can tell that you've been talking with someone with like the strength and the way that you've been talking about things. So I think finding a therapist is really helpful if you have the resource or ability to.
Well, I think it's super helpful in my personal experience. I thought I had to do it on my own, which is so wrong. And I really was stuck for a very long time because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable and ask for help. So again, I've said it before, but I really admire your courage, because it takes courage to ask for help. That being said, I'm curious. Is this we all experience loss, and it comes in different ways, and some are unexpected and unimaginable, and some could be planned. And I'm just curious, was this your maybe first experience with loss in your life?
I'd say it's the first one that I maybe even realized is a grief loss that is will really leave kind of a hole in like the patchwork of like my heart, or if my life's a tapestry, like this is going to leave a hole. It seems fitting, but hopefully over time I can kind of patch it back up. But yes, I think I'm 33 years old, so I've been lucky in my life or blessed that I've just had some grandparents pass away, from different illnesses. But working with grief, I've realized that grief isn't always the loss of someone. It can be an event small in your life, as a move from a home or apartment you lived at for a number of years to, I think I've suffered loss to kind of talk about more about my mental health past, or experience. I suffered a severe eating disorder at 20 years old, and kind of really lost the majority of my 20s to kind of leaving college, going to treatment for that. Kind of what was left from my eating disorder, I got help and was treated for it very early on. But I kind of missed my 20s. My eating disorder left me with a lack of self-confidence, self-esteem, kind of loving myself, and kind of anxiety and depression, being on medications. And so I'm working through grief now. I realized that was maybe another loss in my life that I haven't properly grieved, or it's been 12 years now, but I still kind of grieve when that anniversary is of that traumatic event or eating disorder when I went into treatment. So there's so many things in your life that happen that can be associated with grief, and that was just my other big one in my life. But I'd say, this is definitely kind of the biggest experience with grief so far in my life, and it's going to be a lifetime of how to baby my child that's in the heaven or stars. What are we going to do to memorialize him and remember him? Mother's Days, Father's Days, anniversaries, holidays. It's like July, and I'm already anxious about Christmas time. So just how to navigate this kind of for the rest of our lives. I do think that time will help a bit. Sometimes people think that's a cop out, but I do think that over time, our hearts will grow and mend, and we'll just keep, I think, kind of being on the self-help journey. will be really helpful in the long run, just by putting in the work to do better and be better person.
Yeah, and Ashley, I think right now the thing that you struggle with, or I think in these situations that are very traumatic and unexpected, it's the meaning, like, why did this happen, and how do we find some good in it, even though it's very, dark at the moment. But I think over time, hopefully, you'll find some new meaning in this. I know that we did. It doesn't happen overnight, but as you said, time heals, and that'll give you some space to start maybe seeing it from a different perspective and finding good in it. Even though right now I'm sure it's hard to think that way. What do you like? I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask before we sign off is, do you have any advice for other young mothers like you that are, in this situation? And again, I know it's still very fresh, but is there anything that you would just want to impart on the listeners of, your thoughts on one thing that might be able to help someone else that's going to go through this?
Sure. Well, I think this pregnancy and infant loss particularly can just be a really lonely place for women, because you are struggling with mind, body, spirit, and some resources can be seeking a therapist right away. I think some people are told to wait 6+ months to kind of, ride out maybe some of the stages of grief from cycling through first. But I think get therapy right away. Maybe join group therapy. Maybe find a grief buddy. Right after my son Declan passed away, I had kind of different people from the patchwork of my life kind of reach back out and tell me about a story or a loss of their baby that happened in their life, and kind of finding a grief buddy or friend to communicate with, and then I think just finding ways to memorialize your baby too. We live in kind of a small beachside apartment at this time in our life, but we do have a bookshelf in our house, and the top shelf has his remains and other beautiful mementos of his life that we are lucky to have. And so kind of memorializing your baby and finding ways to parent them from far away. Other people tend to gardens or plants or flowers. You find symbols of your baby out in the world too. For me, my Declan, I see beachside kite displays and I think of him. And so those would kind of be my suggestions is I think just with grief, you do want to shut down, but for me, also commute. I've heard that this could be a part of bargaining, is wanting to share your story. So I don't love that, but sharing my story has been really helpful to me. Just a couple days after his death, I wrote a pretty lengthy Facebook post and asked for help. I created a meal train for my husband and I, and asked for help and told people what was going on with us. And so sharing my story has been really helpful. We held a memorial for him. It was supposed to be my baby shower, but we held kind of a celebration of life or a memorial for him at the beginning of the month. And I wrote a letter to him and read it. My husband took up a new hobby, which was he's playing a dulcimer, which is an old, I call it a river violin. It's kind of this very, very folky guitar, and he played that. And other family members wrote and shared poems, and I put together this beautiful table with with a beautifully decorated table with candles for him. Our father and my father-in-law gave a baptism certificate, and another aunt and uncle dedicated a star in his name. I think they named the star Full of Goodness, but in the Irish Gaelish words, which I don't even know how to pronounce, but it was very thoughtful and kind.
Well, I think it's also important, though, Ashley, what you're talking about is just reminding people it's okay to keep talking about him. I think so many people have the misunderstanding that after there's loss, that it's so uncomfortable. They don't know what to say. They think they're going to upset you if they bring up your person. And I just think it's so important to continually share, just like you are, and to continue the conversation. I did want to ask, did you ever feel, I think we all have this idea that we can control everything. And we believe we're in control of everything, but some things are, the unexpected that we can't control and we can't prepare for. How has that changed for you? Like, how you live today in the present. What does that look like for you now?
Yeah, I think perfectionism kind of links perfectionism, your sense of control. I think you're kind of acutely aware now what you can control and what you can't control. And I think kind of going through life now, kind of I really feel like I live this balance in life now where I'm like really cognitive of my emotions. I really am like aware of what is going on with my mental health and rationalization. When it comes to kind of your sense of control, you're really shown what you can't control. And it's amazing what, even in 2023, when a woman has a baby, there's really not a lot that it honestly is still like as if we were living in like caves or something. There really isn't a ton that can be done, at least for the instances or the symptoms that I experience. You just kind of have to pray and wait and see what happens. For any subsequent pregnancies, I'll be kind of a low grade, high risk pregnancy, and the same things could occur again, but there isn't much to do to prevent it. So you're just made kind of acutely aware of what you're not in control of. But I think anxiety does kind of like run a little wild after a loss like this occurs. I know like even leaving the home can be kind of difficult sometimes, when you experience kind of some traumas like this.
And Ashley, we met you out on the beach, and you had mentioned what you had actually wrote on your who you needed to forgive was the professionals at the hospital. And can you share, maybe that's just a good way to wrap up, how you've been, processing that, and what, for the audience, what you've had to go through with that?
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting parallels with I was in the hospital for 5 days before giving birth to my son. He was in the hospital for 5 days. The hospital bills have now kind of rolled in. Luckily, with the care plan that I'm under, he kind of falls under me for the first 30 days. And, my mind can't help wonder, what if he was at any other NICU in the country? Would he maybe still be with us today? But, I think just, it's the unknown of just, God had other plans for him. And as painful as it is earthside and living with that every day, there's just other plans for this, beautiful soul. And I think having forgiveness for you realize the gaps in the kind of the medical industry and how clinical things can be. And, there still are, everyone is just doing their job. And I think people who work with pregnant women and infants are amazing people. And I think just trying to do their best job. And, I wrote down on the piece of paper trying to forgive that little bit of bacteria, that got into my son's system. There's no way to really investigate or find out exactly how that occurred, but I think it's not helpful to kind of dig into that. There is an amount of acceptance that I've kind of immediately had to wrestle with or acknowledge in myself.
There's just some things that we're never going to have an answer for, and as hard as it is, your courage here is just very inspiring to me. And I know that there's going to be something that comes that's going to be amazing from this. There always is. I know early on when we're just knocked off our base, it's hard to find those things initially, but they do come. So that's what I want to encourage you to just expect that something amazing will come out of this. And we'll just keep praying for you and Declan. And I know we've met for a reason, and I really want to just thank you for your, courage and the time that you shared here and just really pouring out your heart. It was very inspiring.
I just want to add, I read something when you change your reaction to the experience, that's when you possibly have a breakthrough to move through it. And I've really thought about that, meditated on it. And we were listening to a recording or a podcast or something, and a gentleman said, once you experience and move through a tragedy, when it's not tragedy, you are aware and grateful. And I guess that being said, you are more aware and grateful for the moments when, it's not present. So I wanted to ask if you would be willing to share with our audience as we close just your definition, your meaning, your experience, your feeling of what forgiveness means to you.
Sure. I like that quote and that explanation. I think forgiveness to me is being able to almost take yourself away from the situation that you're in, and also to kind of see maybe the horizon or the bigger picture of life or beyond life. And I think it takes an extreme amount of kindness and compassion to others to be able to forgive, to navigate forgiveness. So kind of this overarching oversight of life and beyond, and then just being a person that goes about life with compassion towards others.
So Ashley, one of the things that we would love to ask is if you would have any types of resources that would be able to really help listeners if they're experiencing loss or there's a loved one that, okay, that's way too much. Ashley, I would just love for you to share any resources that you have found that have really been helpful as you have moved through this experience.
Sure. I've mentioned this a few times, and I'm just a paying participant, but I would really love to give a little shout out to a group called Return to Zero Hope. Their website is rtzhope.org. They're an amazing organization that provides resources to bereaved people, specifically for pregnancy and infant loss. They offer workshops in small groups, and they even provide resources to medical professionals. So I would really recommend them. And then they have all kinds of couples groups, individual, maybe childbearing groups, LGBT kind of groups, other medical professionals groups to learn about birth trauma. It's a very inclusive organization, but it is specific for pregnancy and infant loss.
Okay, so that's rtzhope.org. All right, fantastic. Well, and Ashley, we always wrap up every episode by just saying that listeners come here to listen, grow, and learn, and be inspired. And you've shared a beautiful message today and inspired me, and I know Kelly and everybody here. So thank you so much. And I'm just, I know we're going to stay in touch, and I'm curious to see how things progress for you, because I know good things are on their way, for sure. So absolutely. Everyone, again, if you have a personal story like Ashley and you'd like to share, feel free to reach out to us on our website, timeforforgiveness.org, and we'll get in contact with you. But Ashley, we just, on behalf of Kelly and I, want to thank you again for sharing your heart. And if there's anything we can do for you in the meantime, just feel free to reach out to us as well.
All right. Thanks for allowing me to. This was really great just to be able to speak with you guys and have your questions answered. I'm excited to share this episode with family and friends and kind of see what comes of it.
All right. Well, Ashley, thanks so much again. It's just been such a pleasure. And please let us know what we can do to help support you along your journey here.
Thanks so much. Hope you guys have a great afternoon. Stay cool out there.
Thank you.
It is a sauna for sure. Bye-bye, Ashley. Take care.